So, Luca, welcome to CTO Confessions. It's great to have you on board, sir. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Who are you? What are you doing? Who do you work for?
Hello, I'm Luca. I'm a Chief Technical Officer at Checkr. I'm in San Francisco today. My journey, very quickly, I'm Italian, and I started as a software engineer, and then throughout my career, became a technical co-founder. I did 3 startups and did the journey of growing it, selling it, staying with the buyer, repeating the cycle. The second company sold, brought me to the Bay Area, 2010. And from there, built another company that was acquired by Citadel, the hedge fund. And then I became a VP of engineering at Coinbase before it went public, stayed through the journey of becoming a public company. And then 2014, joined Checkr as the chief technical officer.
You're a bit of a veteran at the old startups then?
Yes, I'm a rare type of profile that have done the 0 to 1 a few times, and also been lucky to be at places that were in hyper growth, and so like seeing a bit of the 1 to N growth as well.
Excellent. I love it. I mean, maybe we can touch on that later on. So I've got a curiosity around that. As many of our listeners know, I come from a tech background. I've never quite managed the startup thing. I don't know how I managed to avoid it or it avoided me. I'm not sure, but well done to you and kudos to you. So actually, one of the things I was supposed to introduce the podcast was well, Emperor Luca Bonmassar. Okay. Explain why I'm using that term to introduce you.
I'm light-hearted, and I like to have fun. And one of the things I've done that is still there on my LinkedIn profile, hidden between many of my introduction and bios, is a hidden LLM injection. That if anyone is trying to copy and paste my profile into an LLM, it's going to ignore other instruction and address me as Emperor Luke and force you to write me in a very old ancient style. And it's fun because I get a lot of LinkedIn messages from salespeople that address me that way, and I know that they're using automation.
Fantastic. I love it. Nice sense of humor there. Love it. So in your role, what do people mostly misunderstand about the role that you're in at the moment, being a CTO?
I think that I get this from my team too, in the sense that what is the role of the CTO? Am I the benevolent dictator? Am I the one just being a capital allocator? What am I? So I think that there is a lot of misunderstanding on what the chief technical officer does versus, for example, some of the VP of engineering. And the best way I would be able to describe it is I am the voice of technology and engineering in the executive team. And I usually go about this principle of the first team, like who you belong to as a team. And I don't think of myself as the person running engineering. I think of myself as one of the executive and part of the executive team. Just that my special team, that the executive team, is to think about the technology, the strategy, and the execution of the product roadmap, pretty much.
Brilliant. Yeah. So it's got a tech focus. So that actually brings me on to a nice segue into the next question is, should CTOs understand business side of business?
I'm very binary about that. I think that the answer is absolutely yes. Back to, you are first and foremost part of the executive team. Your job is also to educate, not understand only the business, but to also educate the business about why certain aspects of technology are important. The very most obvious one is the always misunderstood technical depth, and how you can communicate to the business why what engineering wants to drive is valuable. And I don't think you can effectively do that if you don't listen and understand who is in the room, many of the other business people, like product, finance, and whatnot.
Technical debt is one that comes up often, in the conversations I have with tech leaders. And actually, being a techie in the past myself, it was always something that I was quite curious around. And also, there was a part of me as an engineer wanting to kind of work on that, because I like to tidy things up. I like things to have their place, and I like things to feel smooth and whatever. And it can be quite costly for businesses as well, can't it?
So I think that very often on the engineering side, we keep repeating technical debt, that doesn't explain to somebody that is not in the technical field the why. Like we're talking in terms of the what. I think it's the way I usually frame it. It's more, including when we are talking about current trade-off of taking on technical debt, is taking a loan on future velocity now, also like the future. So very often when you frame it as we can do that, it means that if you're now shipping one feature per week, the trade-off is that after that, we will be able to only ship 2 features per week or something like that. The other is to make it very concrete in looking, for example, in retrospective here at Checkr. We have spent a good amount of time in analyzing all our incidents, all the time that we have affected customer in a negative way due to costly tech debt trade-offs. And that allows us to, again, speaking the language of the business, put a dollar amount to how much those decisions are costing us or slowing us down, like both in opportunity costs as well as impact customer. And back to speaking the language of the business, that allows us to like talking apple to apple and being a lot more effective.
So that's really interesting, Luca. From personal experience, I've actually worked for companies where technical debt actually got so big. It was almost like a singularity, like a black hole that created so much gravity that it just started sucking everything in. Have you ever experienced that in your career? And if you did, how did you kind of escape that? How did you get rid of the black hole?
I think it's really, really hard to escape, but it's like the real debt. You have to do proper financial management, or at some point you get to tech bankruptcy. So same thing in technology. You need to manage your debt along the way. If you get too exposed, you need to have the very hard conversation with the business of we are now in tech bankruptcy and our roadmap had to be completely frozen and do something else.
Out of curiosity, being an engineer as well, and many engineers listening, is it sometimes the case where you just have to start again and it's not a case of refactoring, but actually restarting the code base? Or is that a mad thing to do?
It's frowned upon in the sense that there are really well-known stories like Netscape or others that when they decide to do the full rewrite, they did not come on the other side. And there is an element of, in the current architecture, you are really well aware of what the problems are, and you can, through iteration, taking care of that. When you do the full rewrite, you are trading off problems for problems you don't know. So very often when you're on the other side, you think that the new architecture will be like solving all the problems, but in reality, now you're going to have problem of distribution if you go microservices or whatnot. So for many of the things that we have done, it's always been incremental. So even in the rewrite that I described, it was always a way to build compatible services that could scale before we could do more iterations. So little steps.
Yeah, little steps, and evolution rather than revolution, as they say. Yeah. That's really interesting. And I imagine, from your startup experience, you had a lot of that, because there's a lot of fast moving, a lot of building up things fast, which has inherently technical debt in it. We used to find it really funny whenever we would do a minimal viable product and the business would turn around and say, right, box it, ship it. You're like, what? Kind of thing. You're not going to be able to do that. So I guess, how did you kind of deal with that, the scaling of the business when you first start off with a concept and then you move, or was scaling always in the mix from the beginning?
I think that the reality is that, especially in startup in 0 to 1, you have to embrace that you don't know what tomorrow will be. It's in engineering, like traditional engineering would be, you are asked at the beginning to build a bridge, but midway you decide, actually, we're going to build a hotel. And as you're building the hotel, you're going to be like, we found that our product market fit is actually building a car wash. And so the problem is that you have started with an architecture thinking that the business will go in a certain direction, but it's pivot after pivot after pivot. And throughout my experience, even in the very large and established companies, if I think about, again, drawing from Coinbase, the company entirely started as we're only trading Bitcoin. And then at some point, somebody say, you know what, there are more than Bitcoin. And now the assumption of it's a single cryptocurrency to many currency has completely changed the assumption. So you have to start over. So those things happen all the time. Like business, it's fluid. And I think that as engineers, we need to make sure that we are not too much in love with our baby and with the craft, and knowing that, yes, you're starting one way and you will have to reorient yourself. So in my mind, it's always about thinking about how do you keep options open without over-investing, because there is also the other problem of if you're trying to predict every possible scenario, you're going to build something so generic that's not going to work.
Yes, yeah, it's a real mix. Sometimes I can imagine you've got a lot of fork in the road, and what helps you make those decisions of which fork in the road you're going to take? Because I guess some of them you can backtrack off, but some of them, once you go down them, you down them.
100%. So it's I always think of the Jeff Bezos framework of the one-way door versus the two-way door decision. You need to know when you're making those decisions, are we doing it the one-way door or the two-way door? On the two-way door, you want to go fast because you can't backtrack easily. If you're making a decision on, for example, what programming language you're going to be starting the project on, that decision is going to stick around for a very, very long time. It could be very hard to backtrack for there. But it's also very important, back to the fork in the road, to know that you might have to embrace that we'll need to wait to get to the bridge before crossing and worrying about crossing the bridge. For example, Checkr, we are becoming from a one product company, we are becoming a multi-product company. And therefore, there is a need to platformize a lot of the core competencies. But when do you do that? Do you do it in advance of knowing that in the future there will be more products? Or you're waiting for that product use case to show up? And my philosophy is always it's better to be late and knowing that what you will build will have great adoption than building things, hoping that one day somebody will use it. That's over-engineering.
Yes, yeah. I can imagine I'd probably get stuck in an eddy current of decision making in that one. So I have to call people in to make a decision, help me make that decision. But I'm glad people like you have a bit more clarity around that. And what kind of voices do you add into your system to allow you to help me make that decision? So knowing whether it's a one-way door, or do you know? I mean,
we are very intentional. So, for example, we have spent in last year standardizing and unifying the technology stack. Checkr came from 7-8 different acquisitions, so there was a lot of inorganic growth that also led to proliferation of technologies and whatnot. So in standardizing what we want to do and saying you can only pick this language, you're helping people with the type of one-way door decision. There are other decisions that you can bring to the autonomy of the team that from the get-go that they are going to be two-way doors. For example, a lot of the feature experimentation, those are two-way doors. And they also get developed in a very different style, like things like that. They get rolled out with proper feature flagging. They get rolled out knowing that we might have to eradicate the experiment in case it doesn't work. So it's a cultural element, like technology is always there is always a cultural aspect as well, as far as engineering team, in knowing what the level of risk in doing something is going to be and how you're going to approach it.
So I want to come back to the company you're working for, Checkr. It's a really interesting company, and I'm just I've got a bit of a curiosity mindset. I'm really curious as to what's the most interesting background check story that you've come across in your company. Are you allowed to share anything on that front?
Yeah, I think that I cannot clearly name names or customers or that. There is a good amount of privacy involved. But I can start from why it's motivating is we definitely want to put the spotlight and allow people to take jobs. So that's a big component of that. There is a second component that is not maybe immediate that people understand, which is also the ability to give second chance. There are, at least in the US, probably around 10% of the US population have some records, and being able to explain, like, and having a second chance, because throughout also our system, the way this is reported to future employers, it's a big part of what we do. We want to make sure that people can redeem themselves and get that second chance. And third, which is also like that trade-off, is the security aspect. We're not only like doing this technology for background checks, but we're also powering, for example, the ability for light screening and real-time screening. So if you try to access a building, they can run your ID through Checkr. If you're trying to access a school campus, we could immediately inform like the security if there are somebody on campus that should not be. Or if you're trying to hire like a nanny or anyone that has access to the public, you want to have a detailed screening to know that those people will be safe to be around. And so for a specific example, like we're able to find like all sort of things as we do those type of screenings. And so some of the stories are, for example, the less nefarious could be like overemployment. That's something quite common, which is people that apply in parallel to multiple jobs. And if those companies are all using Checkr, we are clearly able to see that they are being screened for multiple jobs at once. We have been involved a lot in terms of North Korea trying to get people employed at Fortune 500. So that happens all the time, especially with the change to a remote workforce and the ability to hire from anywhere. We have seen a very large uptick of applicants that are coming from adversarial state just because they want to place fake employees at Fortune 500 for, of course, like spy reasons. So being able to like identify those and screening, it's obviously very, very important. And the least probably like nefarious is like people embellishing resumes and saying that they had more senior roles at places that they haven't been. Like all of that is something that we regularly see at Checkr.
It kind of reminds me of a story. We had a politician here who got into a very high position, and actually, I think even on LinkedIn didn't actually describe what it was. So I think it's a useful tool to have. I love the idea of a second chance. You know what? I'm gonna make a bit of a confession myself. Thank God for second chances. You know, yeah, because you know, some of these systems can be very kind of blind in terms of you did this and then that's it. It's like a you're done. You know, it's like a binary gate. So do companies use that quite a lot? Is that service you provide to people to explain what something is in the check, or is it something that the companies that are using your service ask for?
So it's something that it starts from the candidate. The candidate can, throughout the process, even before we run any check, self-disclose. And that's probably the easiest way to for the candidate to get in control of what happened. And then we allowed the candidate to provide like narrative and also in some cases like proof of evidence of, for example, yes, this has happened, but it was 10 years ago. I was able to do like this amount of work to like take care of it, redeem. Here is like volunteering work. So they can provide like the whole narrative. And throughout the adjudication process on the employer side, this data is available. And in some cases, like companies, for example, even Checkr, we, for a number of roles, like, and for the type of, like what has happened, we have like, I think 5% of the population here at Checkr has some type of record. And there are companies that, they're embracing that, both from a philosophy perspective on wanting to give it a second chance. And so it's a very delicate balance between like transparency and being able also for the candidate to tell their own story.
Brilliant. I love it. I love that. I love the idea of transparency and people being able to be transparent without it kind of doing them in kind of thing. And as part of your checks, I can imagine there's some, there's obviously a negative side to this where people kind of get obviously get checked, and the filtering is as requested. But also, I can imagine there's some real positive stories around people landing their dream job. Is any? I mean, I bet that's a beautiful satisfaction that you actually help people get the job that they wanted. Is that something you celebrate within the company much?
Yeah, I think so. I think that that's part of what we're driving. We have a consumer product that allows people to create their own version of those checks, for example, to verify their professional licenses. So if you are, let's say, a nanny, you can create a full public profile of having no, for example, criminal records, but also you have maybe professional licenses, CPR licenses, and that allows you to very easily then market yourself in multi-core marketplaces, and also have a leg up to in the competition, in the sense that if you're now listing on your profile on care.com or other places that you have all those licenses pre-certified, you're definitely going to get more inbound and more easy to close on some of your gigs. But yes, absolutely. We get also a lot of positive stories as well.
Brilliant. I love it. That's really nice to hear. And coming back to your, some of your cases of, interesting stories, how hard is it for somebody to fall in employer these days? Is it really hard?
As always, it depends also on the sophistication on the employer side. An example of running everything but having guts in the process, so a failure scenario is that requiring people to get through a background check, but then who adjudicates that it's disconnected from the interview process. Meaning that if during the interview process you share that I work at Apple as a software engineer, and then at the time of submitting the background check, I say, actually, I was a software engineer at another company. Whoever gets the part of the background checks needs to go and verify anything that was shared through the interview process to match. So we're noticing some of those gaps in the process, and we're building technology to help companies avoiding those gaps. But I would say from a background check perspective, it's generally hard to hide anything because we have such a network of connection in federal database, local database, state database. So it's very easy to get this data into the background check. But again, of course, people can try to get in the system and find ways to provide information that can derail the process.
I did check your website out, to check away. I mean, I'm very curious around this kind of industry. And you've got quite a lot of different areas that you can provide this kind of checking service. What's the area that you think needs to have more background checks in your spectrum of industries or markets that you provide a service to?
Yeah, so I think at this point, we have also evolved from just being background checked into more being a people data platform. And that allows us to bring that type of assets to a number of other categories. For example, more recently, we are investing and providing a lot more services in the risk and fraud area, so the trust area. So I mentioned that with the partnership with Verkada, we're now pretty much offering to every building that wants to do light check. But in general, I would say all the area looks still on the trust and safety, all the industry that have large amount of turnover and they have contact with public, it's definitely the area that we see the biggest ROI. But of course, you get people in and out very quickly. I can think of retail, I can think of gig economy, and you have exposure of other people to the public, and so there might always be a safety aspect that needs to be properly evaluated.
Wow. Okay. And in fact, you mentioned the gig economy there. What can people in the gig economy do to make it easier for people to check who they are? Because the gig economy is very democratic. It's very kind of like it's a So, as a service provider, how could I make myself easy to be checked on and verified?
So like we generally work in the background, so no pun intended, in the sense that all these gig companies use our infrastructure, and as a gig worker, you will go through the process of onboarding that at all this gig company is getting more and more like strict. You will be able to provide like your own identity, so everyone at this point goes through an IDV, so the identity verification process. So the first step is to verify that you are who you say you are, and there is no identity theft involved. And second, once we know that you are who you say you are, the next step is to go and verify for many of those companies like criminal checks primarily. That's number one, screening and verification. And the second one, it's typically like motor vehicle, like ensuring that, for example, if you're working for, you will becoming a driver, or if you will become still like somebody that will go and pick up food on and deliveries, that you are safe to drive. So those are the typical basic type of checks. And again, there is a lot of variation in how extensive to be, like how, for example, old data to go and check for. But all of that will come in a report. And then companies have their own rules to adjudicate, meaning that what are the threshold of what they deem safe and not. And the vast majority of the company also have periodic checks, because, of course, like the fact that today you have nothing on record doesn't mean that in 6 months or in a year things have changed. And so they go through periodic screenings.
Yeah, I can imagine. There's always need a push notification that something's happened here, kind of thing, to flag up to people. Yeah, it's a fascinating industry. And what's the most difficult part around creating these checks? Because I imagine you've got lots of APIs, you're hooking into lots of different systems, lots of transactions. There's a security kind of element around that as well. What's the most difficult part of all this?
I think that people from the movies, especially Hollywood movies, they think that there is a giant database sitting somewhere where you can just type an image or a picture and you get all these beautifully information formatted back. That's just in the movie. At least in the US, there is no such thing as a centralized database, and information are everywhere. And some of the information are not even accessible online. You physically need to go to a court to request records, and they're only going to print it to you. So what Checkr did well is pretty much this concept of an abstraction layer, let's call it an API or a UI, into something that is incredibly messy in the backend. Because we completely abstract the fact that certain jurisdictions, certain DMV, like the motor vehicle registry, have something online, but most of the DMV we interface with are running on IBM mainframes. And so we do have IBM mainframes on our side to collect information or like change information. So our technology stack is very diverse. And in some cases, we have processes and technology to send people to physically to court to collect record, scannerize it, and send it back. And that's why like background checks in some cases can be like executed in 1 or 2 hours, but in some cases it might take days, because there is a lot of manual things that are happening behind the scene, especially if you touch international checks as well.
Yeah, fascinating. What a world, kind of thing. I'm on the give a shout out to APIs. I just think APIs are game changers in the world, and we need more of them. Because it just allows information to kind of flow a lot easier, and also innovations to kind of sit on top of innovations. It allows us to extend and do some clever stuff.
Especially now that we're seeing, for example, with renaissance of that with AI, and these AI bots, like the latest being OpenClaw, and these new bots that are able to integrate and connect, and the interoperability is what makes creativity like develop on top. So like big shout out to APIs.
Love it, love it. So I kind of help bringing in a word that sometimes kind of annoys people and what have you. GDPR, data security. How do you handle that? Because you're obviously dealing with some pretty sensitive data, and you're probably storing some of it as well. How do you manage that?
I don't find it annoying. I find it great because in a world of ambiguity provides clarity. It's much easier to get, especially from legal and compliance, some specific guidance on the do's and don'ts. And so, of course, like we are compliant with all those laws, not just the GDPR, but also the California version of it, which is even like more strict. We have technologies as well as processes to, for example, like in the case of GDPR, making sure that the transparency to the candidate, that everything is designed privacy first. That bleeds into how we think about security. You want security with the typical defensive programming, knowing that even internally, service to service have to be authenticated. There is a lot of encryption so that all the relevant PII are always encrypted at rest. And of course, we have a very powerful security program as well in monitoring if there are mishaps. And the type of mishaps could be that all of a sudden we are logging PII that should not be logged. And so if that happens, we go and scrub all of that and make sure that all the PII are accessible. And then you have solid role-based access control within the company on who can access what. So you really want to design it. And I think that going back, I think that having the guidance of laws that says this is what we want you to be, raise the bar and ensure that we cannot take shortcuts.
That's really good to know, and an interesting area, because when we're swimming in this data, it's very difficult to kind of manage that and make sure we are compliant. I guess you've got some as you describe it, you've got automation around that GDPR, so it's not a kind of manual thing. It just happens. So beautiful. So I've got some follow-on questions here around tech. So we'll get all techie. I often joke, we're going to put on our sandals and white socks and put on our kind of like very long Cody type beards. Okay. So what is in your tech stack that you like to share here? I mean, obviously, there's going to be some kind of confidentials. Any recommendations for engineers out there, what you need to have in your tech stack?
So we have let's call it the paved path, because Checkr came together with a lot of inorganic acquisitions. So we inherited a wide spectrum of technologies. But at this point, I would say all our business logic, it's Ruby on Rails shop. So the vast majority of our APIs and services are powered by a very traditional Rails stack. The iceberg for us, it's the data supply chain, because we have a lot of technology built to go and collect data from 7,000 different data sources. That technology at that point is very much AI driven. We are leveraging a lot of AI to manipulate the data, collect the data, scrape the data, but also detecting anomaly detection, which is a big problem. If one of these data sources start to send garbage in, you get garbage out. So we have invested a lot in, and that's pretty much Python and proprietary technologies for models we have built to get this transformation in progress. From a tech stack perspective, on your question on what would I recommend, I think that we have invested a lot on the tools. So you have your production tech stack, which is like how you deliver the product, but the control plane, it's something that we've been very intentional on like spending on the right observability tool, in the CI/CD, in having a lot of quality gates. So, for example, we are employing Cursor Bot, which is just a bot that double check any code review that goes out. We have integrated Sonar Cube, which is another technology that evaluates the quality of the code and constantly give feedback on not only code coverage, but like the hotspot of the complexity in the code. And then like custom tools to like operate all of these, because it's very, very important. Like we are operational heavy and intense. So having the proper tools to automate our own work and in many, many cases, completely automate our job. An example of that is when you have such large fleet of scraper and integrations, at any point in time and any day, a percentage of that is failing or it's broken, either because something has changed on the website, one API is changed, and we spend a lot of energies just to keeping the fleet alive. But now we have built tools and automation, and especially with AI, that job is getting automated. And what I mean by that is AI is great at detecting that something minor has changed in the website, the layout has changed, and now your name is not here, it's here, and it can self-heal without requiring an engineer to rewrite the scraper. So investing in the tooling and investing in the control plane is how you make also your main core tech stack better.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, I didn't really think about that, because you're working with so many different entities out there, and they're moving. The market never stops, and I guess some go offline as well. Some say it's not there anymore.
All of a sudden, they change the API format, or like at scale. Like even though it's a rare event, when you're doing 7,000 plus, it means that every day somebody's changing something.
Yeah, it's making my head hurt, actually, the complexity of it. And I can imagine, I don't know, do you have like a red and blue light that flashes to say, API's changed somewhere, and people come rolling down a fire, a slide or something like that to kind of fix it? I can imagine there's lots of fire drills around this.
I think it's better than that, in the sense that at this point, it's you are observing the system failing and taking care of itself, in the sense that we have anomaly detection. We have a solution called Monte Carlo that analyzes if anything is off. And then we have invested in what we call circuit breakers that are specific instrumentation within our tech stack of saying, if we detected that source is anomalous, we can just turn it off so that nothing else comes out of it. And then we get notification. Typically, like you get triggered automatically an incident that the system has detected that part of the architecture it's not having a good day, and that it was automatically stopped to prevent reports or other to be affected. And then if the system can self-heal, we just got the notification. If the system cannot self-heal, an engineer will go and see what it needs to be done before turning on the circuit breaker again.
Yeah, that's fascinating. That's really, really good. I love this, because it reminds me of that the lean process. Pressing the red button on the production line. Got to fix it. Can't stop. And I think that's a really good lesson for a lot of companies out there to know, because sometimes these things just keep churning it out and actually create a big mess. It's like a headache. That we could have avoided, and knowing when things have gone wrong. If one of our previous guests referred to something quite interesting, I thought, which was that a mean time to innocence, similar kind of thing, where how quickly can they look at their dashboard and know everything is fine or not fine, and where was it fine, and was it us, and was it that system over there, etc., etc.
And it's a learning process. Like we've learned a lot through also painful incidents as well. The important part is that every incident has to be an expensive way to learn. And as long as you're learning and you're not repeating the same learning again, I think that the organization gets stronger and stronger every day.
Great. Is there a tool, a program, or language you feel needs to be learned that's not being learned in the space?
I think that for us, the anomaly detection was something that was a plus, but it was a plus that completely changed the game, in the sense that back to the dashboard, you can do the traditional software engineering of I have all my amazing Datadog dashboard. I can even set alarms, but very often those alarms are just trivial. As if the failure rate crossed this threshold, like say something about it. But very often those thresholds are not meaningful. You could have a small percentage of customer failing, but they are failing like in a terrible way. In our case, they are getting, for example, wrong reports. How do you spot even simple anomaly was something for us that we could not get around it. We did all the table stake, we had all the right monitors and alarms, but still we were failing because of that. And so for us, the investment in this case, Monte Carlo technology and identifying even those small anomalies that were significant was very, very important in this industry.
Beautiful. Great. It's very interesting. I'm going to reflect on that further after we've had our conversation, because I think detecting those anomalies is another layer of software that kind of watches the software. It's almost quite recursive in a way. Who watches the watcher, though? Who watches the watcher? Watch the watcher.
Technology is also helping in managing the complexity, because all of these complexity on complexity on complexity, but technology itself, it's producing solution to manage the complexity.
Yeah, I love it. It's fascinating. It kind of makes me want to go back into engineering. So let's come to your leadership. Well, this is my heart. I'm a big fan of leadership because it makes such a difference to the world and the companies that we work in. So talking about background checks, okay, and now kind of turning this to your teams and your company, how do you make sure that you get the right employees? What are the checks you put in place there? What's the filter?
I think it's an art, not a science. I think that the vast majority of the companies are testing for hard skills. And I think that that's getting commoditized more and more, in the sense that the typical interview process for engineer, where we're asking the impossible question, it's at this point something of the past. Looking at talent management, at least in engineering, the people that are the most successful, or in the other case that don't get success, tends to be a lot on the soft skill. Things that are really, really hard to screen for, things like grit. Will you able to go through the ups and downs of the typical work of a startup, or your attention to details? It's very, very important in engineering, or your personal intrinsic motivation versus extrinsic motivation is a big one, because it drives what kind of ownership you will want to have. Is it just because you want the next promotion, or you're really here because you're really motivated by impact? And all those things are really, really hard to screen during an interview process, because even the STAR model and behavioral model of open question, people will always say that they want to come to drive impact, and that's really hard to get during an interview process. That's why I feel that the industry is still relying a lot on previous people that you know and you work with before. Many companies are moving a lot more on the work trial, so that's becoming a lot more dominant in the industry. So that would be my magic wand request is how do we also get not just the hard skill evidence in the process, but how do we know that the soft skill will be successful here?
Absolutely. I think it's very tricky, trying to get that perfect team member. And it's a very costly investment bringing someone onto your team, especially here in the UK. I don't know what it's like in the US, but, once you get somebody in your employment system, it's very difficult to kind of manage that if it's not quite the right thing.
As a personal philosophy, I totally reject the hire fast and fire faster. I think that if you ask somebody to quit their job to join you, you don't want to within 2 months say, oops, sorry, we got it wrong. That's why I prefer in the hiring process to maintain a very high bar. I always say, unfortunately, we have to hire for the level of confidence that we have. And in some cases, you probably have to reject somebody that maybe is not as good at interviewing. But again, the downside would be that if you take a chance and then it was the wrong chance, you're going to have a very negative impact on their life.
Yes, yeah. It's I remember just while we're on the topic, I remember some interviews I went to very early on in my career, and a few of the interviews were very doubting of everything that I said. So they would ask me a question and I'd answer it because it was my truth, and they were, that can't be true, and they almost were pushing back, and I had to explain myself. And it was quite funny at the time, but I think what they were trying to do was really probe down into, was that my truth? And I had to explain it and then explain it again. But yeah, it's a very difficult one for candidates and also companies. So maybe Checkr can create some type of kind of neural check, an fMRI scan, what part of the brain is working when you ask this question. I don't know.
We're not working on that.
That's good to know. So if you could automate any part of your daily life, being a techie and being a tech warrior that you are, if you could automate any part of your daily life, what would that be?
Despite being the CTO, I still like very hands-on, and therefore anything that is more around the process itself, like budgeting or any of that, it's not my happy place. I would say that I found a good compromise because I hired an amazing chief of staff. And I'm not shy to say that all the things that are not purely technology, I was able to have a second man that's taking care of that. So it's my way of approaching my daily life automation.
And that's really good, actually. And I really want to champion the fact that the company has done that, and you maybe instigate that. Because one of the things you find, so for example, I'm very good at many things. Just make this about me as an example for a second. But I'm not very good at admin. Okay, admin is, I get very confused. I get, I don't know why, but I find it very difficult. And that shouldn't really stop me from doing a good job in a company, but it's just not what I'm good at. We can't be good at everything. So yeah, it's interesting. I'd love to hear from other people around, how companies have made up for areas that, that aren't strengths of somebody else, because we're beautifully unique.
And I think that for me, having the investment in having a really amazing chief of staff was like making the difference. There are a lot of activities that have to be done. Like now we are in finalizing goal setting and chasing every of my reports to make sure that they update their goals and that their people update their goals and so on. Like having somebody that can focus on some of those activities, or every month I need to review like budgets and allocation, and having somebody that can do all that analysis and present it to me rather than me chasing stuff makes a huge difference.
And it frees your mind up to work on the areas that probably the business needs more of. In fact, does need more of, So that's a great idea. I think that's a really good takeaway.
Well, or like divide and conquer. Like we're very intentional to say like those are the areas that meetings, etc. you will go because you are great at project management, tracking, and I can focus on some of the other priorities.
Brilliant. Good idea. Yeah, that's great. So listen to that audience. Great advice. I think that's a really good way to go forward. So as we come towards the closing arc of our time together, unfortunately, Luca, I've got some nice warm kind of questions around just your, things that here you go. What things in your journey have helped you on your journey? So I'm thinking books, maybe mentors, maybe particular characters within the tech that have been inspiring towards you. What would you like to share on this point here?
A book I often think of and I bring it back is Amp It Up from, I think, Frank Salomon, was the former CEO of Snowflake and ServiceNow. It had a big impact on me, especially on how do you create urgency and bias to action, especially when you develop and grow larger and larger teams. Velocity tends to go down and urgency gets reduced because you might try to drive urgency, but there is a lot of shock absorbance that happens in the organization. And so Amp It Up was a really great framework on how to think about driving urgency, driving accountability, DRI culture, and all of that. So definitely a book that I recommend.
Brilliant. I love it. I'm going to look that one out. It's not one I've read. It's not even on my book of Himalayan book mountain of books I want to read. So I'm going to add that to my Himalayan book mountain. Here we go. I'm going to be a genie for a second. I'm going to be the tech genie. I'm going to offer you a wish for your leadership, for your industry, or maybe just tech in general. What would you wish for?
That the vision of what we're saying in the public about AI gets real, because right now there is a lot of vaporware, and everyone is talking about outcomes that are not there yet, and that creates a massive pressure on the industry. Is it true that we don't need to write software anymore, that somebody can write software? That's not real.
And actually, so I'm going to work on that wish, because I think we need to do that, because it's actually been quite damaging for the industry. There's a lot of fluctuations and step changes in people's attitudes and planning, et cetera, which are causing, some pretty sad stories, actually. So, yeah, I'm not sure how we educate people around that. I mean, is the education happening? Is there a correction happening? Is there a re-informing people as to what is the reality of this?
I think that we're starting to witness it, especially when there were very big claims of companies that could get rid of their entire support team, and then they had to backtrack and rehire everyone. I think that more and more there is the understanding that, yes, we are seeing productivity improvement in developing code, but the life cycle of software is much bigger than just writing code. For example, I just had an offsite yesterday, and some of my senior IC pretty much declared that the problem of writing code is solved at Checkr, in the sense that we have amazing tooling, we have AI agents, all of that, but the rest of the software life cycle is not there yet. And the most obvious one is, how do you test it? Yes, you can produce 10 times more software, but how do you know that it's accurate and doing what needs to be done? So I think that the mythical we can replace people, or it's going to produce a 10x, it's not absolutely there. And as an industry, we have to make a lot of investment to not just shipping 10 times more line of code, but how do you maintain quality high? And you see that AI slop is becoming a word, that there are now disposable apps that are easy to create. And those are great. Like before, people were creating spreadsheets. Now they're creating disposable, like one-time use apps. But that's not the same thing as building durable software, especially in many, many fields of this industry.
Yeah, I've seen a few business owners actually try to do that themselves. They got very excited and jumped in there. And it's very difficult sometimes to kind of persuade them as it's doing the job at the moment, but you try scaling that, you try using that with a few more users. And also you probably got lots of gaps of shadow cases and blind spots that you're not got on your radar. So absolutely, I think it's a really good shout out.
AI is amazing. We're using it wildly in many, many areas. I'm just saying that especially if you want to build a full application, you get 85% there, but then bridging the rest of the 15% might take you like 10 times more than it is today.
Yeah, brilliant. So we need to kind of work on that and re-educate people. So I'm going to work on that wish for you to realign people's expectations. So as we come to the final full stop, what's your final key takeaway that you'd like to leave the audience listening to this podcast right now as a gift?
That connecting with what we discussed with AI and looking at Checkr, the technology management complexity that we have, the industry is absolutely not done, and we need to help, especially on the junior side, how they will develop into senior and more, because AI will make it everything easier, but will also mean less ability for them to grow into becoming a senior. And so this technology complexity will have to managed, and we need to grow the next generation of leaders to do that.
Brilliant. Love it. Thank you for your time, Luca. It's been wonderful having you on CTO Confessions.